Peter Kagwanjo, that latest development so far. Yes, we've been talking about Haiti, I think a good game. And people were saying now that we had the PM in this country having signed that bilateral agreement with President William Ruto. He went to Puerto Rico. He's not deposited actually the agreement in his country, and now he has resigned. So far, we don't know if the agreement is in Puerto Rico or in Haiti. But what does it really say as far as veracity and authenticity of that particular agreement is concerned, now that we don't have a prime minister?
I really don't know what happened to the thinking Kenya. We become a country that I don't know what is really guiding us in terms of our decision making, because there must be some form of strategy with an end game to it. You cannot just swim into the open waters of the international politics that way. Anybody who has invested some time and thought to study Haiti knew that this was a perilous situation. It was occasioned by the assassination of the president before. And it was very clear that the acting president, who is the prime minister, had himself escaped numerous assassinations. As Kenya was being called by the United States to take its troops to Haiti, and not the troops, but the police officers to Haiti, the situation was that police officers, were actually resigning en masse. Others were laying off as late as last month. 4,000 police officers literally were reported out of the forces. And at the same time, there were massive, escapes from prisons, again in thousands in the last 1 month. And like every other country, Haiti is going through serious stress relating to the kind of recession that we are facing globally. But at the same time, they had a serious hurricane, and the system didn't seem to respond effectively to that situation, and the world community did not come to Haiti's aid. Therefore, it's a mix of very many things happening. And we are also familiar with the history of the evolutionary history of Haiti, whereby the line is clearly drawn between those who are for or against imperialists. That's the rhetoric within the Haitian political landscape. So for Kenya, whose police officers don't speak French and have no clue about French, and are not from that Francophonic culture, anybody could have questioned what was the driving motive of Kenya. Yes, the argument has been, Kenya has a role to play with the humanity, but are we more humane than other countries? And what, anyway, would 1,000 police officers do in a country where, massive break from jails, resignation of police officers, and, a very well-organized gang led by a person whose name tells you what they're up to. His name is Barbecue. What are you supposed to do there? Yes, so that to me is what was the problem. Therefore, the resignation of the prime minister is basically was predicted long time ago. Our colleague Obong predicted it last week. Here, he said this is a no-brainer that this man is going. The country, the situation in Haiti is actually getting out of control. So that's why I ask, what happened to the thinking Kenya, particularly in matters global strategy? And it appears that we are now pulling back from a situation that we should not even have entered into if we had really engaged the thinking part of our lives. So finally, the question is, what was our attraction, or what really attracted us to Haiti? Was it humanitarian or philanthropic motive, or simply profiteering. And I think this attraction of 41 billion, another one $100 million dollars and all that, they talk about money. And are we engaged in modern slavery or modern slave trade? Mm-hmm. Are we really putting Kenyans' lives in harm's way just because somebody has dangled the carrot of money? What happened to principles? Mm-hmm. What happened to this humanity that you care about your citizens? Mm-hmm. Because, as one of our colleagues last week said, mm-hmm. The situation in Haiti is a clear indication that the country is a meat grinder. And as a meat grinder, you cannot be putting your citizens in harm's way that way. So I think our law, our judiciary has been right not for the first time. Mm-hmm. Another time, it has stood up as a champion and defender of the rights of our people in Kenya. Because it has stood from the beginning saying this, this mission is illegal. It is a violation of our constitution and our law. And we kept on saying, it is standing between us and development, all that rhetoric. But the truth of the matter is, lives of Kenyans matter. Lives of Kenyans matter.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's hear from Dr. Ken Ombongi on this as well, because we have seen, just as we saw there, the signing of that particular treaty. What does it portend moving forward? Do you think now this is a high time to go back to the table and rethink about the deployment that is pending so far? Because we don't seem to be having any political stability on the horizon as soon as possible, right? So this might give Kenya maybe time to just pull back and think introspectively regarding this deployment as it stands right now, because it seems everyone is not really for it.
Well, thank you, Dibal, and thank you, Professor Kawanja, for those thoughts. You're asking me whether it's the high time now. The high time was a while back. Probably we were not able to see it for some reasons very well known to us. And part of what I do in the University of Nairobi, I teach a course we call the History of World Revolutions. And we start with the first, what we call the first African revolution in Haiti. Very, very interesting. Listening to the government trying to explain that they didn't deploy the other day just because of the resignation of the Prime Minister. And they talk about the lack of a political administration in Haiti. For a long time, actually, there hasn't been any political administration to talk about in Haiti if we became real to the situation on the ground. For the last several years, the country of Haiti has been a case of the order of disorder. Mm-hmm. If I may use that paradox. The Prime Minister, in the first place, just coming in on the heels of the assassination of the president, Ariel Henry had no legitimacy on the ground. He was not elected by anybody, and when he was here, he could not access his own country. So the signs are very clear, Dibal, that we seem to be operating in an environment as a country where we have a very clear disconnect between what we see as the ideal, whatever is driving that ideal, whether it is racketeering, as Professor was saying, or just trying to play to the whims of other powers in the Western Hemisphere. We seem to be playing a game where there's a very clear disconnect between the reality and the real situation on the ground. Mm-hmm. While the real situation on the ground says this is a mission impossible, mm-hmm. Our ideal is saying we can do it. But the pronouncement yesterday, I was expecting it. I told you I spoke to your colleague, Francis Ontomwa, actually earlier in the day, and told him that I'm looking forward to hear government becoming bold and saying, guys, we hold on this and we will review the situation and come back later, at least to depict some level of bravery when we are dealing with diplomacy. Yes.
All right, so you spoke of Francis Otoma, and he had done that story for us. Let it just run right now so that we can get an inkling of what you are saying, and also Professor Peter Kagwanja regarding this particular mission. Francis Otoma up next.
The announcement by the Principal Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Korir Sing'oei, now serves to punctuate the controversial deployment. According to Sing'oei, Kenya will halt all activities until Haiti establishes a new constitutional authority.
What has happened over the last few hours presents a change in those circumstances, because there is no administration on which to anchor deployment.
Yeah.
Okay? So as such, we will have to wait and see what kind of administration is going to be installed in Haiti.
Prime Minister Ariel Henry's resignation comes after a regional meeting amidst escalating crisis in Haiti. Seeking refuge in Puerto Rico since his last visit to Kenya, Henry fears for his life amid heightened violence surrounding the country's airport in the capital, Port-au-Prince. This outcome was anticipated by some analysts.
The resignation was long coming, because if it didn't come, there were all indications that he would have been assassinated, the president before him. So his time was up as far as that place is concerned.
While Kenya freezes its mission, the U.S. has pledged further support. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced a contribution of $300 million to reinforce the mission's efforts. Henry ascended to power in 2021 without election following the assassination of his predecessor. His visit to Kenya escalated tensions in Port-au-Prince. Since January, over 1,000 people have been killed, with tens of thousands displaced from their homes.
I'm very sure that even where the president is, he must be thinking twice. One of the leading gang leader is a guy called Pebakyu. And it's like his name probably manifests what he can easily do to our men and women in uniform.
The government's next steps remain uncertain after announcing the final phase of pre-deployment, despite mounting opposition from various quarters. Haiti has been under a state of emergency since an attack on the country's largest prison in Port-au-Prince earlier this month, resulting in casualties and the escape of 3,500 inmates. Francis Ontomwa, KTN News, Nairobi.
Continue with the conversation here regarding that particular latest development. Let's hear from Professor Macharia Munene on that as well. And moving on. So, as I've mentioned, I pointed the question regarding us going back to the drawing board and recalling maybe our decision moving forward. Will it be the wisest of decision to make?
I think it is very wise to do that. And even last week we called for that.
Yes.
If you remember that, we said just change mind and to say that things are different. We are not part of this anymore. It was a mistake in the first place, and it was said so. And the impression created was that the president had a problem listening to advice or accepting it, because from the beginning it was a disaster. And people said it, but he didn't listen. Now, what has happened is that an opportunity has come up for him to reevaluate his position and come out on the right side of the people, so that going back to the drawing board is the right thing, and say we are no longer part of it. The language you use is something else. Say we are halting or taking a break or
a pause,
a pause
until there's a stability.
Until there is a, barbecue is running the country. Haiti. And he had already said, you come and we show you dust. Eh? You know, so if barbecue is running the country, there's no going there. So it's back to the drawing board. And I think it's necessary for the president and his team, Foreign Affairs and Security team, to rethink clearly exactly what are they doing. He started very badly. You remember the fiasco about Western Sahara, eh? You know, on first days, what are you doing? So it gives him an opportunity, roughly 2 years later, to think seriously, what does he stand for? What does Kenya stand for? And then how does Kenya project itself, not only in East Africa and Africa, but throughout the world, in a credible way? So far it has not been credible. And that's a disaster. So what happened yesterday, saying you are putting a pause, is very good and it's very wise.
It's very wise of him.
Yeah, because now it brings in a different picture altogether. And to the point where you can discuss issues in a serious way and not be dismissed as just people being dangled with a few dollars, of which Kenya has yet to see. You know, the 100 million or 200 million. So they're having a little problem paying small debt, you know, related to that.
But if you have a problem paying debts, you know, any money is good money, regardless of how small or minuscule it is.
The Americans promise that money. How come it's not there to pay these little things?
But maybe you're not privy to that information, if it's been paid or not. Yes, yeah. So you wouldn't really say.
No, but we understand some debts are not being paid related to that. So that's small evidence.
Okay, let's hear from Varamalim. Good morning, good to see you, and welcome to this forum.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. It's a good forum. Yes,
So today you're all apolitical.
No, I am happy with the likes of the people who are here now. Now, the problem we have with this thing is, I look at it myself in a very holistic. Excuse me.
Oh, you're running through. That's
I have a small sinus which sometimes blows up in the mornings. Yeah, Haiti is one country that all the free people, all the free world, people who got their independence from imperialism and colonialism and slavery and all that, should all come together to save it from the state it is in now. Haiti was the first country in the entire Americas to fight for its own independence and win it. Forget about the USA, but the rest of it. And they won. These are black slaves who rose up against France and the combined might of the West those days. Not only did they liberate themselves and become independent in 1804, I think, somewhere around there. 1804. But they are also the bastion of all the liberation in Southern America, in Latin, what you call the Latin America. They supported in the independence of parts of Brazil, in Guyana, in Venezuela, in Bolivia, in Peru, in Colombia. The person who is now said to be the father of Southern Central America, the Simon Bolivar, who was a Venezuelan himself, was a young man of 21 years old when Haiti won its own independence. He went to Haiti to go and seek support, and got all the support he needed from the Haitians. Sharp, brave, strong blacks those days, when there was slavery being practiced in America and in lots of these other countries. They not only helped him get that independence, but gave him one condition. Every time you become independent, you free all the slaves. You free all the slaves. Now, from that time on, Haiti has always been on the crosshairs of the so-called imperialists. They never forgave it for that. They never forgave it. The British, the Americans, the French, all of them never forgave these blacks for having pulled off that. Personally, I would have no problem with having a caucus of Afro-Caribbean countries coming together. Afro-Caribbean countries coming together to try and stop what's going on in Haiti. It's never been good for years, actually. For years and years and years and decades. Remember the Papa Doc and the Baby Doc and all that. And Tom Tom, what was it called? The Tom Tom Mohawk or something like that. The people who are basically the gangs that you see here have a history, have a very long history. I would love to see a situation in which we are in the forefront of a process of bringing together all these third world countries, black people, Africans, Caribbeans, Afro-Americans, all of them coming together and say, how can we save the mother of the dignity and the respect of the black people on this globe? And I think it's a good idea. But the way we are going right now of trying to do it on behalf of the Americans have never had good intentions for Haiti throughout history. And the rest also, the French, the British, the Americans, I will never trust them in the issue of Haiti. Because you will never be forgiven for fighting a white man and defeating, that white man, even if it's hundreds of years later. So basically, nobody stands any proud black man. But then the way we are going about it right now, 1,000 people is just a too small number to bring about the kind of stability that that country needs. 2, we can't do it ourselves on behalf of the Americans, in my own opinion. Or rather, with the support or the pushing and the pulling of the Americans. But I would love to see it in a different format, in a different thinking process, in a different philosophical base and foundation, in which we say, let's go and save that country. Because you see Haiti is here. And when you see it from it is degraded completely, deforested completely. And then the Dominican Republic is right next to it. You see what I mean? You see the difference in that. Mm-hmm. And there is still a lot of racism in the Dominican Republic, which is right next to it. And even when you look at Haiti, every time you see somebody being propped, is somebody who is kind of a mixed blood. Mm. That also has, you get my point? Kind of not a pure, what do you call black?
Not a pure breed, so to speak. Right? The gene pool has been mixed up, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Malim, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to show you what we have on the front page of East African before we take a short break, because also that will act as a segue to our next discussion. We shall show you, but much later. I think it is disconnected right now. But why Mathuki has to go is what we have as the splash in this week's publication. President Ruto nominated the EAC Secretary General to